Oh, hey there. I was just opening the cabinet to grab today's sustainable ingredient, cinnamon. Let's sit down, spice things up a bit, talk about how cinnamon can be a excellent sustainable product in your cabinet. Now, let's get into really what is cinnamon? Where does it even come from? Like, are there any health benefits? How do I even use it? Let's get into that. So, cinnamon or cinnamomum is produced in many different countries, but the top three being Indonesia, China, and Vietnam. Now, in these countries, how do they even harvest cinnamon? Well, cinnamon is produced by cutting down the stems off of the tree. And what they'll do is they'll take those and then they'll cut out the outer bark, and it's the inner bark that they're looking for. So don't bite off a chunk off the stem and expect any flavor. Got to get that inner bark, and then they dry it in strips. Well, it's not necessarily just the bark that's the flavor, it's the oil in the bark that is the flavor. And some background history on cinnamon. Cinnamon was so scarce during the Middle Ages that it was worth more than gold. I bet you didn't think about that in your cabinet. Now, it was also a symbol of wealth. It was very rare in Europe. Now, the two main trees that we're going to get into are the cassia and the ceylon. Now, these two trees are used to produce cinnamon. I mean, the cassia being the cinnamon that you know and love that sits in your cabinet. Now, how is this even produced sustainably? Well, we'll get into that, but firstly, one of the big issues is deforestation. So you can see the mass production of it. A lot of people will cut down on many different trees to produce as much cinnamon as they can to survive, which goes into the labor rights. People being paid equitably for their work and labor. So deforestation is one of the big issues with cinnamon. Also soil depletion. Soil depletion meaning the soil being used up and the lack of biodiversity in the soil around the trees, because people will just plant these trees and these trees alone. So it goes into the demand versus the sustainability, especially with deforestation. Now, how can we assist that? Well, some of the efforts are being pushed that is NGOs, non-government organizations. Now, some of these are nonprofit, and these are very important to balance out all of the other companies. Independent farmers too is some that we need to push. Now, some of the other efforts being made to help balance out all of the cinnamon harvesting is the reforestation. As you can see, harvesting all of these different cinnamon trees, you're just cutting down tree after tree after tree and depleting your supply, and then also the forest and killing the ecosystem. So we need to push back against a lot of the just excessive cutting down of these trees. Another issue to push back against the cinnamon sustainability, or supporting the sustainability of cinnamon, I should say, is also fair trade. Okay, creating these opportunities for a lot of the disadvantaged producers, helping them out so that way it balances out the production and who gets the money, and spreading that out a lot better. One of the other things that we can push too is the transparency of how a lot of these the cinnamon products are produced. And that also goes into accountability too, holding these people accountable for the amount of damage that they're doing to the forests. So we need to promote these eco-friendly techniques, especially if they're being promoted by a lot of these companies. We need to promote them to help balance out the amount of cinnamon harvesting that's being done. How do you find that out on any of the products that you see? Well, one of the different ways that you could see that is by looking. You have like non-GMO, genetically modified organism, and then you also have other labels like organic or fair trade, which is another important one. So we've covered a little bit about the sustainability of cinnamon. Let's get into some of the benefits. What can I get out of eating cinnamon? Well, some of the benefits is antioxidants. There's been studies that have found that you can reduce the markers of inflammation by eating cinnamon. It's a natural food preservative, which is great, and it also helps lower your blood sugar. And how much do I even need to eat to help this? Well, about 3/4 of a teaspoon daily could reduce and help out a lot of these different parts of your life, like the lower the blood sugar, and also help prevent against heart disease. And it can also help blood pressure. So now that you have all of these different great health benefits and the sustainability of your cinnamon, how do you even get into prepping this? Do I just grab it off the shelf and unfortunately have it in pre-ground form, which isn't the most fresh, still good, but one of the best ways to prep cinnamon is in its whole form. You have these cinnamon sticks that you'll see. You could use a mortar and pestle. I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend something like a coffee grinder. Now, be warned, because of the oil in the cinnamon, it will ruin your coffee grinder and you'll taste cinnamon in your coffee if you use it. Now, when you use it, I would designate that coffee grinder just for spices because it is best in its whole form and you'll taste the difference in your food. So try it out sometime and you'll definitely notice a difference. And some of the recipes that you could easily try it out in, one of my favorite, and I'll provide a link, is cinnamon rolls. Of course, one of the big names that comes to mind is Cinnabon, with me at least. Some of the other ones being pies like pumpkin pie. You have sweet potatoes that you can make, and then one of the more interesting ones that you might not have thought of is like pork roast or pork chops. Pork chops with apples, cinnamon spiced apples. So good. And one of the other cultural recipes that you could look into, which I'm definitely going to try, look into this one, is a Bavarian pot roast that uses cinnamon in the recipes. So I hope you try out some of those different recipes, and then also using cinnamon in its whole form to give it that real kick and noticeable difference. So when you go to the store next, I hope you look at some of the different cinnamon products out there and notice if it's a sustainable product. Organic being one of the big key markers that I look for, and then also fair trade if it's on there or any of the descriptions. And I hope you learned a little bit today about the sustainability and how cinnamon originated and some of the different historical facts about it. And if you have any kind of recommendations for a ingredient that you're curious about in the future and how it can be more sustainable, or the sustainable practices in today's environment, leave a comment. I hope to talk about some of the ingredients that you're interested in the future.